Welcome to House Call, Episode 3. I'm Shel Robinson, and today I have Tom Golightly with me. Tom is a producer based in south of the UK in Bristol, and thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure. Glad to be here.
It's really good. I love your studio. It's a great setup. It's good to see it on the call as well. Thanks for showing it to us. You've got a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, as I said, I've had to tidy up a bit to make it more presentable for this. Normally it's there's stuff everywhere, but yeah, I've acquired a few bits and pieces for music production. The thing I like about some of these synthesizers is at least, you know, they hold their value. Most stuff I bought used, and so you can buy this stuff and then, you know, okay, maybe it doesn't work for you, and you can normally pass it on without, you know, Generally, I don't like a lot of tech stuff because you buy a lot of it and then almost instantly it's worthless. But the thing I like about this music stuff is if maybe some of these synths don't work for me, I can move them on. So, but yeah, some of these, the Korg Minilog creates some really nice sounds. It's got a lot of, it's very versatile. The Arturia one, I'm still getting to grips with a little bit, but it's I got it was a good price, to be fair. So yeah, it's come to me that way, but I still do a lot of stuff in the software as well. So but yeah, it does the job. This is where the magic happens.
So let me ask, did you grow up with music in your life as a child? Where did you start your music process for you?
No, I mean, no major music. I mean, I've you know, I liked a lot of music growing up, and kind of, I suppose, started out in sort of rave music. It would have been in the early 90s, and then just moved on. I mean, I diverted into different types of music from time to time, maybe more kind of bands and things like that as what came along, but I always end up coming back to house music or you know, dance music, is what you know, best term for it. So but no, never trained in music, never learned any instruments, never did anything like that. My dad liked his music, mostly classical music, and also he was a big sort of Pink Floyd fan and stuff like that in the early days, so I used to listen to some of that. Still got stuff on vinyl here. But yeah, just an enthusiast really, and obviously I used to go to clubs and stuff like that. But yeah, I suppose it sort of moved. I started it with that, then I moved on to the kind of 90s trance, which was quite popular in the UK.
Oh yeah.
Judge Jules and Pete Tong and all that sort of stuff. It was all on the radio on a Saturday night, Friday night, and Saturday night here. Was all that kind of stuff on Radio 1, and then the Essential Mix, it used to be in the evenings. There was, as I said, in Bristol, there's quite a lot of dance music comes from here. Way Out West, which is Jodie and Nick Warren. And a lot of other dance music acts came over, a lot of drum and bass as well from Bristol, Goldie and some of that kind of stuff as well. And that all came out of, there was a lot of that, like Jodie and Di, which started out, Jodie Risanoff and DJ Di, DJ Di was part of the big skateboarding scene that was in Bristol at the time as well. So I used to do quite a lot of that. So I used to bump into a lot of these people in and amongst things. I mean, I was a bit younger than they were, I suppose, at the time, but so yeah, there was that, and then it just, I guess I've just kept up with it, moved on from there, gone through different phases of enthusiasm for different parts of it, and yeah, here we are today. I don't know quite which bit of it I preferred the most, but it's been yeah, just all sorts of various interesting parts to it.
Totally. And then what made you decide at some point, what year was it where you were like, I want to learn to do this and start to produce music? What was that for you?
Well, I'd always done a bit of the DJing in amongst work. I mean, in work, I worked as an engineer and project manager in construction, things like that.
Yeah.
So I got to move around the world a bit doing that, luckily. And I did some DJing when I was living in Malaysia. And obviously it was vinyl in those days. I used to have to order records from the UK. It used to take a week to arrive. Yeah, so yeah, the DJing side has always been there, but then it kind of tailed off a little bit, and I was moving around. I didn't have my decks with me or whatever, and then I bought, obviously it all went digital, so I bought myself some new stuff, USB, you know, controller and all that, and started doing DJing that way. And then really through, I guess, COVID, I was back in the UK then. I'd been living overseas up until then, came back, started putting some mixes together and releasing them on SoundCloud. I was listening to a lot of Tony McGuinness's deep sets that were on YouTube, and was getting me kind of back into the enthusiasm was brewing. And then a mate said to me, well, next thing is you're going to have to write your own tracks. And I thought, I don't think I can do that. It just seemed like a daunting task. But then I thought, no, let's have a go at it. And then started off trying to do my own tracks. I mean, I had most of the equipment because I bought the monitors and stuff as part of the DJing equipment. So I had kind of what I needed to get going, bought a cheap MIDI keyboard and had a go. And I mean, as you were telling me about your production, it takes you about 6 months to produce a first track, and then, or more. And then you kind of, once you get a bit of confidence, get the first one out there, and then you get a bit more interest, and people come to you with remixes and odds and ends, and it's just built on from there, really. Don't know if I ever started with any great intentions of, you just work towards getting your first track out there, and then you kind of, okay, I've done one. Can't take 6 months for the next one, so then you get the confidence when you get another one out there, and then you, as more are released and you get some good feedback from some of them, you just build on it. So that's kind of where I am now, really.
That is awesome. I love the story of kind of your career trajectory and moving around and then coming back to it as well. That deeply resonates with me too. I took a break and was raising my daughter for a while I was working, but never left the love of the scene or the music or the culture and all of the producers in it. So what was your first song that you ended up releasing? Is that what happened?
Yeah, well, the first one, I mean, I actually released on SoundCloud, free releases, a couple of remix or bootlegs. I did one of I think Depeche Mode it was, and another Massive Attack track, because you can get, it's a good thing to crack on with, because you can get the parts for some of these tracks quite easily. There are people, not sure they're actually from the actual band, but there are some people have made them themselves, maybe, or whatever. Anyway, they're out there, and they're a good thing to play around with if you want to just get started with something rather than just literally starting from scratch. Anyway, I had various ones that didn't work out that well. I sent them to a few labels, never heard anything. And then eventually first track started to sound nice, started to come together. So as I said, it still took nearly 6 months to finish it. I agonized too much over minor details that really I didn't need to. And in the end, I sent it to Third Avenue, who released it on their We Are the Future series. They do, I guess, 2 a year, I'm not sure. Anyway, they put these compilations out of new artists. And he came straight back to me, like within 20 minutes, not 20 minutes, but a few hours, came back and said, yeah, I'd like to release it. And you're like, wow, not what do we do?
That's a great first label. What a great, that's a good.
Yeah, so Third Avenue and the whole, they've got Future Avenue as well. I've released loads of tracks on them and done remixes for them and all sorts. It's a guy called Dom who lives in Belgium who runs it all. They've been a great label for me, and I play a lot of their stuff in my monthly sets. I mean, I do my best to support them as they were the first ones. I've got a section of the track you can hear.
Oh, good.
This was my first one.
Pretty dreamy sound to it. I like it a lot. That's really good.
As I said, I worked on, I had the basis of that for ages, as in the drum beat and the basic sort of bass line and the chords and stuff like that, and which I really liked. But it was that I was in that vicious circle of that all producers get, and I'm sure, where there was that, it must need that bit more, you know,
Yeah.
a little bit extra, that little bit, you know, on just need that, you know, that maybe that's not quite, I need to add that. And inevitably, I think I kept adding things, and then I spent probably as much time taking things off because it was just, you know, there was unnecessary lots of, I kept bits of them, you know, but it was too many occurrences of some, I don't know, some bit or another. And yeah, and in the end, you finally you send it out there and you wait to see what happens.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's
I
done
also,
well. It still sells now. I mean, it's, you know, it's,
oh,
if it's one of my best, I don't think it's my best selling track, but it's, you know, it's still out there, still gets picked up every once in a while.
good track. And talking about the production process too, it's I find too, it's like making the music open up. Like I sometimes try to get too much too close together, and kind of learning how to spread the melody out and get the song structure right so that you can create that flow and not create too much clutter. You and I were chatting before we started recording too, kind of about, you know, adding too much and then trying to figure out to take away, and too many samples. And yeah,
No, I mean, I think the thing I've learned also is the positioning of everything in the mix. I mean, essentially, what you've got is or the way I work anyway, is you've got in the EQ, you'll see there's just a line. So this is the bass, and this is the hi-hat, and the shakers and so on, and you've got to fill all that basically. So what you'll find on a lot of my early tracks, there's nothing much in there in the 200 hertz bit, you know. And then that creates a sort of a slightly thin, slightly tinny sound to it. So you start learning a bit more about a kind of synth bass type sound, which starts to punch in there, or maybe a different type of kick drum or whatever. But essentially it's trying to fill everything. So what they tell you a lot about things like putting things together, you can fix certain elements in the mix, but you can't fix what isn't there. You can't, you should really cut, not boost. And so it's a matter of getting the right sounds, you know. So you know, a melody in this section of the mix, and then maybe a you know, a pad that just fills that other section, and so forth. And you know when that comes in, and sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you just pick those sounds and they just sit really well, and you just have a lovely nice mix. Other times you fight it, you know, where you've got three things you really like the sound of that are all just on top of each other. And then you start getting into, you know, compressors ducking and things to try and make way for other things. But 9 times out of 10 in all of that, there's too much there fundamentally. You've got to accept that, you know, I mean, the greatest tracks, when you listen to them, I think have got hardly anything in them. You know, I've
really
had
simple.
That's one of the great things about remixes, actually, is when you get somebody's parts and you realize how really simple some tracks are. You know, you just think, well, there's like 6 or 7 sounds that create that. You know, you don't, some very complicated, but it just, there is that, there's always that bit where you get to the point. I tend to find I get to a point where I'm thinking there's something that needs to be added, but I can't find it. And that normally tells me there isn't anything to be added, because anything you find, no, that's not quite right. No, that's a bit busy. That's not sitting there right. That normally is trying to tell you there just isn't anything else. You can't, that is it. You know, if you want to add something else, you're going to have to take something else away. So normally what I do one of those with that sort of track is I'll just leave it, let it sweat for a while, go and do something else or work on a new track, come back to it later, and then normally it's, oh yeah, actually sounds pretty good. So
take a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's good advice. I think, you know, Steve Jobs always said too, simple is hard, but simple is actually what works. And that's a good reminder for all of us in our early learning of production, in our novice phase. So
yeah,
tell
I
me,
think
like,
there's a fine line between being simple and being lazy.
oh
You know,
yeah,
you
definitely.
can't just sort of, I'll just stick a bass line and a few drums and sounds and all the rest of it and a bit of melody, that'll do.
No.
You know, yes, you can make a track with simple sounds, but they have to be the right sounds. You know, so you're right. I think inevitably you do what we just discussed, is you pile a lot of stuff in, and then you just take things. I find with drums, I'll pile in 4 different lines of samples, and then I'll like drum loops or maybe whatever they may be, and then I'll start taking bits out where they clash and stuff like that, and then you end up with just what you want from each one, and then that makes hopefully the right sort of thing.
Absolutely. So in your production process right now, kind of walk me through, is there anything you're working on right now? Like, you want to talk about your creative process and kind of how that works for you and putting it together? And then on that same note, are there any influences or anybody that you really like right now that you tend to kind of go to for inspiration, or more on kind of what comes out of you naturally?
Yeah, I mean, inspiration wise, I'd say probably people like Sebastian Leger, Tim Green, Nick Warren, mainly on a DJ sense. He does some production, but not a huge amount of production. But someone like Sebastian Leger, probably on the production side. I mean, I've moved. I started off with the kind of organic house, but now I've moved into a more groovy kind of sound. I like a nice groove to my tracks, and tracks with a nice groove tend to catch my ears. So and that's actually quite hard to do, I found. So I think you just, I mean, you just learn. I mean, you just learn to recognize the well-produced music, because it's clever. It's it's got a nice, and it sounds easy in the sense, but it isn't. You know the work that's gone in to make that. So in terms of creative sense of like, I suppose. I mean, I've listened to other DJs sort of say that they listen to music from certain people, even stuff from a long time ago, to just get the vibe, get themselves and going. And that's the factor with music. I mean, one of the problems with this is if you try and really work too hard at it, that's also a bit of a problem. There are days you sit down, it's just not there. The enthusiasm's not there, or just not feeling it. And so you do have to either listen to something, I don't know, different things actually sort of get you in the mood for it, but I like Sebastian Leger does like a monthly mix. I quite like listening to those, and then I just, obviously I get a lot of promos now from lots of different labels like Third Avenue and many others, and again you'll pick stuff off there that will put you onto new artists. It's one of the things I've always liked about dance music. It's that kind of a bit like with films to some extent. You can see a film, like it, see the director who directed it, find other films he directed, go and listen to those, and then watch those and probably like those, and so forth. So that's the other thing. There's just so many producers out there that you probably never heard of. Then you find them, you like their mix or whatever, and then you go back, find other music. So but yeah, in terms of tracks we're working on, this is tempted to say it's finished, but I wouldn't say, I'm not 100% yet. So I tend to start with the drums, and this is just a fairly, nicely sort of grooved, with some bongos in there and that kind of stuff. That's mostly done out in drum racks, so that's mostly samples that I then put the plan in for, rather than taking. I've got a couple of, I think that's a part of a drum loop. Only the first part, and then I've cut it out and I've filled in another part. So that's one drum loop. Then that's another one come on top of it. Got another one in there, so that's another loop. And then various other things. The thing I like to use on shakers is a thing called contact shimmer shake strike. So that is it's a piece of software that allows you to build up shaker patterns, and I found that really good for shakers. So I used to hate listening to shaker samples, just go over and over again listening to them, and they're always either not quite this or not quite that or whatever. And so anyway, that's the basic one. Clap goes on top of that, which just loads of clap samples. Just pick one that works on the day, and then drop a kick drum on there. That kick drum is made up of two different samples. So you've got, that's the bass part, sub bass, and then the main part is on there as well. So again, go through phases on kicks. I mean, sometimes I take ones from old tracks, to be honest. If I find really nice on a certain track, I mean, I don't stress too much over them. So anyway, that's the basic drums. Then what did I end up to with this one? What I found was this sample. This is a synth pad. This is a for whatever reason, it just caught my ear. I think that's a part
like it.
bit after that, so I cut that out. And then I got a vocal sample. This is cut up into bits, so that's a longer vocal sample, and in Ableton, I'm sure you'll come across it, you can slice a sample into many bits, and then you can pick the bits you want out using MIDI keys. So if you don't want all of it, you can just have these 2 bits, and then put them at the whatever spacing you want. And then I think I've got some pad underneath it, which is that. It's probably a bit quiet. So the sample with the first one, the pad, not the pad sample, that synth pad one, that gave me a key. So that's A minor, and then obviously from there you know what chords you can use and stuff like that. If you want to go underneath. Then I've got a few arpeggios. So this is in Repro, which is one of the main synths I use. Repro 1 and Repro 5. Repro 5 is essentially, so they're both replicas of old school synths, basically software versions of old synths. So that's, and then we come into the bass line. So I'm trying to get some groove into that. It's not too much to it, but when you bring everything else in, it's just sitting underneath the kick, and you know, it's not trying to do too much. A few other bits and bobs. This is the other one I came up with, and the bit I'm still working on is how these 2 sit together. They're a bit
kind of playing off each other.
Yeah, so the 2 sit well together. I'm not sure whether the synth sample, the synth pad that comes in, that works well. This bit seems to be a bit busy with the other 2, so there are times I listen to that and like it, and there are times I listen to it and think I need to do something with it. So that's kind of how it came about. So I can't remember what I put in the drop. Oh yeah, I've got this. This is Serum.
Oh yeah.
So basically, I've got Repro 1, Repro 5, and Serum. They're the ones that make up the majority. And the other one I would advise everybody gets, which is because it's free, is Spitfire Labs. Spitfire Labs is unbelievable considering what it costs, i.e. nothing. I mean, it's got brilliant samples, all sorts of cool samples. They've got, basically you download the app itself, and then you can add to it with all these different samples. Spitfire do incredibly expensive packs, download packs for making films and stuff like that. They've got a huge recording studio and all that, but their free thing is fantastic, I think. Anyway. So I've got a thing underneath there.
Sounds good.
An obligatory bit of white noise.
Yeah, atmospherics.
There we are.
I predict that'll do well. I really like it.
I think I've dropped that in one of my sets. I put monthly sets on SoundCloud. I think I may have chucked it in there at some point, but yeah, that one's nearly there, I'd say. I think pretty much there actually. So I just need to finish that off. But as for the creative process, it tends to be, you know, start on the drums is how I tend to work. Then I'll find some kind of sample, something will come out of somewhere. It'll be something on one of these synths. It'll be a sound. It'll be a melody. Who knows? Just something. And then, you know, maybe something will just sit nicely with it. The beauty of I use a site called Noise, which is I think it's called Noise. Anyway, it's not spelt noise. It's a strange spelling of it. But anyway, that's a sample site where you spend Noise, Noiz. They it's a sample subscription site, so basically you pay per year and then you can download as many samples as you want within that year. Anyway, they have a thing called Noise Player, and that allows you to drop it in on one of your lines in Labelton and just play tracks from the site along with whatever it is you're listening to. So that can really help in when you're stuck, I find. So if you're just playing your track and you don't really know what you're looking for, you know the key and that's about it. So you just go for the key in Noise Player and you just start growing down, and it just plays obviously little, whatever they are, you know, 5 second, 10-second samples, and something will catch your ear, you know. That vocal here, that one, this one, I mean, that didn't catch my ear as that, but the original sample caught my ear because of the fact that it sat nicely with the what I already had. It wasn't right in its sequence, but it was right in the sound. So I just knew that I had to play with it a bit and try and get it to what I wanted. But yeah, other tracks have come about in different ways. Other tracks have gone with the melody first or gone with something else first. So yeah, get that one finished and see if we can get it out there.
But you and I actually connected through SoundCloud too. I think I had bought one of your songs and put it in a set, and then I ended up tagging you, and we ended up connecting back and forth. But I've been playing a lot of your music. I really like it. It's excellent, and just what I'm usually looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to regularly search SoundCloud for. I just put my name effectively to see if my stuff's appeared in people's sets, and then I generally thank them for doing so. The same with, as I mentioned before, Phil Moonface Thompson, who's been a producer in the UK for a long, long time. He again contacted me through SoundCloud. He really liked my mixes that I had on there. I'd seen that he'd listened to one mix like 7 times or something, and I thought, oh, he's either clicked the key too many times or he's actually enjoying that. And then he wrote to me and he said, you know, look, really like this set, and we've been chatting back and forward since then. He remixed one of my tracks on Future Avenue. He wants me to remix one of his tracks now, if he ever gets around to sending me the stems. So yeah, I mean, this is how it works. You do get a lot of kind of rubbish through there from time to time, but I think you can fairly easily pick the genuine people from other people, and it's good to, you know, to link together. I send my tracks out to a number of people who've played my tracks and stuff like that, and we chuck stuff back and forward from time to time as well. So yeah, it's it's good to do that. And I mean, you know, you don't expect anything out of it as such. It's just nice to get the feedback, and like you say, I do spot artists who included my stuff regularly, and you know, you try and do what you can to support, you know, sort of thank people from that support, you know.
It's super important. And I also believe I have Moonface on vinyl. I've got like 2,000 vinyl records from like 2000 to 2004-ish when I started to go digital more. But I think I'm going to go digging later today and see if I can find them.
Well, Hybridized Fears was the main one. It was the second release on Bedrock, I think, which is the one I have. I may have a remix of this somewhere, but he's not far from me. He's about 2 hours away from me, but I haven't got round to popping down there yet. He does like a live stream every now and again, DJ mixing. So he's invited me to do that at some point, but we haven't managed to get a date sorted out. But I think if I do, I'll take my copy down there, see if he can sign it for me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, again, I knew him straight. I knew when he when it's popped up as my, because I do sometimes look who's been listening on my sets. I think he commented on one as well, and of course I knew the name straight away because his stuff was really popular back in it was the early days of Bedrock. So but yeah, that's been and yeah, it's great to make connections with people around the world, and then they send you, you know, in some cases send you remixes and things. Can be good fun to do, and yeah, it's just nice to, but more the support. I mean, Phil's been very good. He listens to a lot of my tracks when they're finished and gives me feedback and stuff like that. That's another very important thing. If you don't, I don't really know anybody, not locally anyway, that does the same sort of thing I do. I think as you get older, you know, your mates will get families and all these things, and maybe don't share the interest that they once had for music. So yeah, you do produce stuff and you think, well, I like it, but you know, does anybody else like it? And it's really useful to have somebody just to, you know, and also to listen to it with a fresh set of ears. Sometimes Phil will say, look, you know, that's lost, that's not got any real bass to it, or, you know, something like that. That's another good. I mean, I know the mastering engineer is the eventual bastion of that, but yeah, it does help to have someone to just give it that fresh ear, you know. So, and he's done it with some of the tracks that he's done. He's sent to me to listen to. So, yeah, it's all good.
That's good. So you had mentioned kind of about getting stuck in the creative process from time to time. I think every artist can relate to that. What do you do to reset that for you? Everybody kind of has different process. What works for you? You know, for me, I get out and hike. Like, it helps clear my mind and kind of get, even if I can't come back to it right away, it's like a reset to get away from the frustration that can occur sometimes. What do you do?
I tend to start another track more times than not. If I get to a point where, I mean, often with a track, like I'll get a really nice loop, 16, you know, like 3 or 4 bars that will just be sounding nice, and also, but then I'll think turning that into a track is then where I tend to struggle, because you stretch it out and then of course it's boring and repetitive. So you've got to start bringing in other things and trying to get that kind of flow. And I do struggle with that from time to time. So I've got a lot of tracks where they're sitting there with that nice loop, but I just can't bear the bit of, you know, trying to turn it into a track.
It's an amazing
yeah, exactly. Do you know, I mean, one of the other things that's amazed me about this, from dealing, I mean, particularly with Dom at Third Avenue, he sends a weekly newsletter out, not weekly, sorry, monthly newsletter out to everyone on the label. And he tells me, you know, he was telling everybody that, I mean, sometimes people send that as their track. They send out the loop. Hey, I've got this great loop. Yeah, and what do you want? You know, a badge? I mean, I just find it incredible that people think that's kind of like, you know, I read some other poor guy on Instagram, don't remember who it was. He was an A&R for some label, and he said, I've spent like the last 4 hours listening to like 100 tracks. Half of them weren't finished. Some of them were not the right genre for the label, yada, yada, yada. Essentially, all of them of no use from one point or another. And you must despair at that stage. But yeah, in terms of the writer's block, yeah, or whatever, I tend to get something to a point where I'm not too sure really what to do next, and then I tend to leave it, go to another track. It's off. I mean, sometimes I've found the solution in the next track, and shut the previous one. So sometimes these things, I mean, you have to accept that sometimes a track hasn't got anywhere to go. You know, it is what it is, and that's that. It's, you know, I've started off with some. I've still got a couple of tracks that I keep thinking are worth doing, but every time I go back to them, I can't make it work for whatever reason. Like I said, I tend to try and like get a groove into things, and there are times when certain melodies just don't do that. They don't have any groove in them. I did the remix I did for the Tarian one that I think you dropped in your set, recent one. That was really hard, I found, to get a groove into it, because it just wasn't that kind of track. So I had to actually put 3 melodies on top of each other. And so I've got one melody playing, and I've got the other 2 melodies using the slice function, Ableton, chopped up to try and put other notes in amongst the notes of the original melody, which bizarrely worked. I don't know how it worked. I couldn't do it again, but it liked it. Something. So yeah, it's yeah. There are times, like I said, I tend to find taking a break. There's no point just hammering away at it. It's not going to get any better. Tend to find a fresh set of ears, you know, or even to, I mean, the only thing I don't do enough of, in fairness, and I wish I could really, is make more variation in track, you know, make some slow stuff, some down tempo stuff, some stuff without a beat in it. You know, I've had a few tracks that I've thought actually that might do quite well with just get rid of the drums, you know, and just have it as a, you know, as a sort of ambient type track. So there's always that, you know, these things always have some use for something.
They do. And part of the process too, I think, and what you're even saying is, like, sometimes what I don't even end up using, I had to kind of get that out, right? It's the artistry of it. And sometimes you just have to get it out so that you can work on what's next after that. And being okay if you don't finish something either is, okay.
I mean, something I read somewhere said that you have to lower your standards a bit. So like nobody, you know, you can't write anything rubbish if you're not concerned about whether it's rubbish or not. So if you sit and try and find some perfect solution, inevitably you're not going to find it. Best to just put a load of different melodies and things in there, and then, you know, start seeing what works. But if you never actually get that far, if you literally just expect to sit down at Ableton and just literally write a masterpiece from scratch, find just the right bass, just the right kick, just the right this and that, it's not going to happen. Doesn't happen for anyone. You know, you put it all in there. You just need a kick drum to start with. You just need a snare. You just need a this and a that and a shaker. You can always change it later. Just get something, get it going, get some basic stuff in there, and then you can start working on, you know, whether it's quite the right sound. There's no point spending 9 hours on a bass line getting it absolutely spot on in terms of its sound and its EQ and all the rest of it, only then to find you can't find anything to go with it.
It's so true. That is so true. Really good advice.
Get it basically working, and then, you know, because you know when that's right, and then effectively just refine it. That's relatively easy, you know, to get add all the saturation and all the other bits and bobs to get it, you know, just nicely in the mix, whatever. Maybe, I mean, even beauty of MIDI, you can change the you know, a different bass sound if you want. Just, you know, take another copy and just try a few different bass sounds. Maybe a different one sounds a bit better, but it doesn't change the basis. Just crack on. I wrote a really good track once just on the train. I was just sitting on a train with my laptop, I had nothing else to do for an hour or whatever it was, and got all the MIDI parts in there. And then obviously I couldn't really do the sound side of it because I was just using sort of headphones, and then sort of turned it into something decent later. So,
I love that. That's a great story too for other producers. It can happen anywhere. That's really true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really crap at distraction. I'll immediately just find something else to do, and that's terrible for me, I have to be honest. So being literally stuck in a space with nothing else to do from London to Bristol or wherever it was I was doing, you've got to do, you know, well, you have to do it, but you've got nothing to distract you from doing it. So you just start, you know, playing around with notes, one thing and another. So that's another thing. If you keep breaking off, doing other things, coming back to it, that doesn't really work either.
No, the focus
at the time and try and, you know, nail it down.
It's so true. I have to get in the right headspace, and then not have, like, I have a daughter, and it's always better if she's not home, and that's not her fault. It's just more about, you know, she's a wonderful person, and she's actually learning how to DJ right now. You know, it's a distraction, so you got to have that quiet, for me at least, that quiet space in order to just focus on it, and you know, not get squirreled, as I call it. It's a lack of focus, squirreling. So
there's a lot of distractions in life, you know, phones, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
constant.
If you can, at least lock yourself away somewhere and try and, I think once you've done the basics, you can then do it a bit more freely, jump in and out. If it's just mixing or, you know, just getting sounds right, that's not quite so bad. But the basic, when you start a track, you need that bit of a quite close attention, I think, to get it going.
Absolutely, totally agreed. What would you say was your favorite song that you created? What was that one for you? Do you have a favorite?
Good question. I don't know. I can tell you the ones that sold best.
Okay.
Which was I can't remember the name of it now. It's one on cigarette music called. Yeah, I mean, probably the ones I've liked best actually have been remixes, bizarrely. Never find these things when you want.
That's okay.
There we go.
I like the name of the label, Cigarette Music.
Yeah, it's a guy in Rome, I think. I've released 2 on his.
Very good name.
I suppose this one actually I quite like musically. I quite like this one.
Oh, Ableton.
Yes.
Are you strictly Ableton? Do you produce in anything else? All Ableton for you?
No. Well, I've not tried anything else. I've not tried Logic or anything like that.
Yeah.
So this was a track called Conundrum, which is the run Phil Moonface Thompson remix as well. But I always liked the musical part of it. It took ages to get it released because I actually sent it to the label. They said they'd release it and then forgot about it. I had to remind him years later. He felt a bit guilty, but it got out there in the end. Well without. I did a beatless version somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that sounded quite good as well. Just
it's really pretty.
It was that kind of track. But the one that sold the best was this one, which is called Arenda. Do you know? I've
heard Arenda. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to like the one we just talked about at the start of this, which is one I'm working on at the moment. It simply goes under the name of Tune 40 at the moment. So I tend to name them when they're finished. And the problem is I can never remember which tracks are which names. So
you and I do the same thing. My production coach is like, you got to name them early. I'm like, I can't. I got to wait until I feel the name. And I feel the name later. So I'm so funny.
Well, I've got like 4 tracks at the moment, which are due out on 4 Senses. Well, 3 of them will be January, 1 will be October on a ADE compilation that they're doing. I'm not sure which one they've picked for that yet, but I can never remember which one's which from the names.
That's a lot of production releases coming. Congratulations.
Yeah, this is horrendous. So this is, I think, the best-selling track, or pretty much.
Love it.
It's incredible, actually, like we said before, where you find these things, just tire of them, or you get sick of them and the rest of it. But the other thing can be where you listen to something 6 months later and you can't believe you actually wrote it. You just, because you can't remember the creative process. I can't remember what I used half of the sounds on that and all the rest of it.
It's funny. It's like it's a creative amnesia a little bit. I get it.
They just sound that much better, further down the line. And obviously
Yes.
with the mastering, I mean, the guy at Cigarette, they use a guy who does a lot of analog mastering, so that makes a nice, gives a nice
That
bit.
warmth.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's funny with mastering. I mean, the better labels always tend to send you good masters, but sometimes it can be, yeah, really, really work, and sometimes not so much. You don't get much back and forth with sometimes with mastering, i.e. you don't get necessarily to listen to it and then go back and go, could you change this? Could you change that?
Yeah.
I think I released another one on Cigarette Music, but I can't remember the name. It'll come to me. And the other one that sold quite well was called Naka. This one, this got to 7 in the Beatport Organic House Pipe Chart.
Nice. That's excellent.
A couple of hundred, I think. I don't know what it's up to now, but yeah, it sounded really well at one point. It got picked in a number of the Beatport charts, and then that, so.
Pad kind of call and answer to it. I really like that. It's really beautiful.
I can't remember I've got a set of things in Serum, set of presets, which is basically an entire orchestra. So a lot of the stuff I use where you get those orchestral stabs or something like that, they're all generally out of Serum. It's really good for that kind of stuff.
Serum's excellent. I haven't gotten into it too much yet, but
it's a bit expensive. I think I bought it on some kind of monthly thing, but eventually, but it's just so flexible. I mean, yeah, I'll be honest with you, with most of these synths, I don't play around with the settings much. I play around with the attack and release. So if you want a quick sound, or you want a sound to take longer, particularly with bass, that becomes important. So you want a punchy bass, or you want something different. And sometimes I'll play with the oscillators on some of the simpler ones, because you've got 2 oscillators, a low one and a high one, or 2 different octaves. Sometimes you need, in a bass line, you might need a bit more high octave to fill in that that gap. But in general, I'm a bit lazy and just tend to bang in presets and just 9 times out of 10 I'll find something that works, and then I'll probably play with sounds in Ableton a bit more. That's the only slightly tedious thing about using these analog synths, is you have to get it set how you want it and then record that, and then obviously apply the sounds to it, but you can't really go back and change it very much, because it's it's set in how it's set at that time. You have to record it, and then you've got that file in there, and then you can play with the effects on it, a bit more reverb, a bit this and that, but so whereas the beauty of the software synths is you can change it as much as you want as time goes on. One thing.
The real synths sound, like, rather than outside the software, to me sound better, because I think it sounds more live a little bit, right? Where the ones,
definitely the sound, and you can see in the EQ, you can see there's a lot more harmonics to these synths than the software ones. So they are good if you want to fill out a mix nicely. You've just got to commit to whatever it is, the sound that you're going to use it with, and get that sound recorded in. And then what amazes me also with these is how terrible the unprocessed sound is. So if you take all of the little gizmos off, and you just got it just sounds like a computer game half the time, the 2 oscillators. And then when you pile on all the gates and the filters and all that kind of stuff, and then you think, it's kind of the same sound, how's that come from that? But it's so I don't use these ones as much as I should, actually. I must admit, I'm a bit lazy. But I have in some tracks, but yeah, I tend to get started with them and get a bit cheesed off and come back into something simpler.
Oh no, totally. Well, I really appreciate you sharing some songs with us today too, and kind of your creative process. Is there anywhere that you think house music's kind of going in a particular direction right now, or any themes that you see in music that you find interesting? I like talking to different people about this topic because everybody's kind of got a different window based on kind of where they live and the music that they're making.
I think for me, I like the music that's coming out. What I don't particularly like is the financial way that music works. I don't really understand. If you looked at it from a business model, why does anyone make music? I mean, truly, what's the point? You know, it's everybody can listen to it for nothing. It ends up on SoundCloud or Spotify. Spotify pay you, you know, 1/4 cent for about 5 million plays or something, and that must be I mean, you know, a lot of producers must be pretty close at any one time to throwing the towel in, and that's you know, I'd like to see the dance music industry stick 2 fingers up to Spotify and stop releasing stuff on there. Now they're not going to pay you for stuff that doesn't get 1,000 streams anyway.
I saw that.
Don't. No point putting mixes on there for the same reason. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff is it's just weird. You just think, you know, what? Okay. I mean, one of the main things I've noticed as a difference, I was thinking about this based on the questions that you sent me, was the sheer amount of releases is one of the other problems. I mean,
huge.
Yeah, when I used to buy records, I used to get them in the post and all that. It used to be what, for my given genre, maybe 40 releases on a Monday, something like that. So you could realistically listen to not all of all 40, but sections of all 40 on Juno Records or wherever it was I used to buy from, and then pick the ones you liked and maybe buy 4 or 5 or something like that. I mean, God knows what the monthly or daily releases must be now. What, hundreds of thousands, I should think.
It's a lot, and figuring out who you want to follow, you know, on Beatport has its own challenge. It helps, but like I do Friday's my day, but
Right.
I'll spend probably 2 hours digging through the prior week, and that's just those that I follow. It's tremendous. It says a lot. I mean, a lot of people, I think, are learning to produce quality music. I generally find 20 to 30 tracks a week now, and you're totally right. When I was buying vinyl, the records were like $12.99 each, so my budget was a little bit different. But I do think the music business model is a bit broken, to say the least, for producers. It's an expensive undertaking to produce in the first place. And then the return is that many times you lose money on them because it's an expensive hobby, it's an expensive passion, but it's an amazing passion. I love it. Like it's really important to me.
Yeah, I think I suppose the argument is if people are producing tracks, and you can release them, there's no expense in releasing them. You don't have to produce a record and all the expense with and all that. There's no physical element to it. Then people would argue, well, why not just put it out there? I mean, you know, someone will like it, chances are. Obviously the labels are the sort of bastions of that. They're the gatekeepers, so they, you know, try and separate the wheat from the chaff, and some are more choosy than others. I mean, I tend to follow probably more labels than artists. So certain labels, I generally like the stuff that they release and stuff like that. I don't know what the solution is in that respect, but it is something that, I mean, it's more of a problem for people trying to make a living out of it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, you know, if you explain it to some people, you're right. Depends how you view it. If you view it as a hobby, it's fine. You know, loads of people my brother does a lot of cycling and spends a fortune on cycling bikes and all the rest of it. And he enjoys his cycling, you know, he doesn't make any money out of it. So you could argue the same for this, spend a fortune on synthesizers and speakers and software and all the rest of it, just because you enjoy doing it. That's fine. But if you view it from the point of view of an industry, whereby you spend all that money, spend a lot of time on it, and then you sell the music, and what you make back on it is it doesn't work at all.
It does not. Yeah.
So, and I suppose, I mean, I really used to like that kind of crate digging, that finding those really good tracks, and that's, there's a lovely feeling to that, and that can be really quite hard nowadays. If I'm honest, probably aside from when I get sent promos and I catch stuff that way, most I pinch stuff out of other people's mixes. So, because arguably someone's sort of done the work for you. So I hear stuff in mix. Sometimes like Sébastien Léger's mixes and others, obviously some of that stuff's a long way off coming out. So you have to keep an ear for when it does get released. But I mean, I find it's because the styles don't make any sense. I don't know if you find that. I mean, like what's progressive, what's organic house, what's some of these other things. I don't know. I mean, so you can't search them all. I mean, that's a bit.
Well, now too, it's melodic house and techno is one category, and those are not, in my mind, melodic techno and melodic house are not the same thing. So, that's dating me back to a different time, but it's you're completely right. Progressive is, for a while it went in one direction, and now I think it's kind of gone back to its roots, which I'm thankful for, because I think it should, but it is hard. Now some artists I know, like Paul Lossoff, he kind of does a combo of Beatport and Bandcamp, and I think he's got enough of a following now on Beatport that he still sells well on Bandcamp as well for kind of some of the self-publishing stuff. Do you find a lot of artists are starting to kind of go in that direction too, to try to quote unquote fix them a little bit?
I know Phil has put a lot of his stuff on Bandcamp, and he was doing quite well out of that. I haven't, because technically it's owned by the labels. I mean, you sign a recording contract on Proton, which is technically signing over that to them, and then obviously you take 50% of the revenue, or depending on the deal with that particular label. So the whys and wheres of putting that and selling it yourself, I don't know. Some of the labels I sell on, I mean, I think Third Avenue do sell on Bandcamp anyway. Not all of them do. But I've noticed artists like Dulles and a few others, they have some tracks that are only available on there. But as you say, you need the labels and you need Beatport for exposure. But if you're being followed by enough people, then you can just put it on your SoundCloud or whatever, and then sell it direct on Bandcamp and take a larger slice of the profits. It's a tricky one, that, because you have to, record labels do perform an essential task essentially, and they need to take a slice for that, and everyone's got to make their bit out of it. I think the kind of frustrating thing is that there isn't enough pie to go around in the first place. That's really the problem. Whereas if everybody just sells direct, I mean, you could get to a sort of rather crappy situation where people just make music and give it to their mates, other DJs or whatever, and never sell any of it on the basis, what's the point? It's a funny one. I wake up different mornings with a different view on it. I don't think it's going to change. You're not going to get rid of Spotify as much as I'd like to. They're there, and that's it, and that's how it all goes. And I just think when you get into this, you probably, I feel sorry for a lot of new producers who probably get into this hoping to get millions of streams on Spotify or whatever, and are somewhat depressed to realize that ain't going to happen. No. It really is. And on there, I mean, you're fighting the music of the last 50 years. It's not just new music. You're fighting everything from the Beatles and Elvis through to God knows what. So, that stuff still does as well as anything. So, I mean, I'd love to be in a position, I must be honest, as the people like Sébastien Léger and others who get to make their music to play it in the club that night. I mean, I can see definitely that being a nice thing to do, rather than just putting it out there and hoping somebody buys it. And I think if I was just making music and putting it in my monthly mixes, I'd be happy enough for that. Share it with friends, other DJs that I know, and that would be, you know, if it came to that, that would be it. But I don't know. I think we'll just see where it goes. I think everyone's in the same boat, so you know, resolutions have to find themselves, I think, to keep everything going.
Agreed.
So yeah, but yeah, Bandcamp's an option. But as I said, I do, yeah, I feel sorry for the labels in that respect. You know, at the end of the day, it's as if you're kicking them in the teeth, and that doesn't seem that right. So I just think if we could get to the point, the problem is the business model is the fact that why does anyone need to buy it? You know, that's the problem. Money's there for if people buy it, but there's no need to, unless you're a DJ. Why do you need to buy it?
Yeah, my monthly budget's not small for what I buy, but you know, that I'm playing it, right? I'm mixing it. I'm, you know, it's important to me to build a collection as well. That's a whole other, like, I'm proud of the collection I've built over the years, and it's something that's important to me. But that isn't, you're right, that's not the average listener anymore. So it's an important topic. I do think something with Spotify needs to change. I'm not sure, you know, they've got a lot of leverage, but it's an important topic, I think, for all of us to keep talking about in the ecosystem of music making.
I don't know how it really happened. I mean, I guess it's been driven by the bigger artists who obviously do make a good crust out of it. You know, and but I seem to remember Snoop Dogg or somebody said that one of his tracks on Spotify had reached 4 billion streams or something like that. And he was like, wow, what's that worth to me? And they said, oh, $45,000.
That's not right.
I mean, I had, I think, 20,000 streams on Spotify last year, and I earned $20 for that.
Woo!
Yeah, celebrate. So
2 beers.
Yeah, that's just about.
2 beers, please. Oh my gosh. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your music today. Is there anything about your upcoming releases you want to share with everybody before we close the show? Kind of some upcoming dates. You had mentioned you have, I think, 4 coming out.
Yeah, coming up, I've got the remix on what are they called again? I wrote it down. Empty World. Yeah, I've got a remix of Empty World. That's coming out. I don't know when it's coming out, but it's finished. So I think there's another DJ another artist, doing another remix. So whenever his is finished, they'll add that together. That'll come out. So that'll be good. I've got 4 coming out on 4 Senses. Again, one they're putting on a compilation, I think in October, and then the other 3 will be out in January because their release schedule's full for this year. And then I'm doing a remix, the one you heard earlier, for 4 Senses. I'm not sure when that's out, so that's kind of getting there. And and I still have my monthly mixes that come out on SoundCloud, which are on Saturo Sounds Radio, and then I put them on SoundCloud, so they get a reasonable following every month. So yeah, look out for those, and most of my new stuff gets dropped in there at some point. There's those, but after that it's working on new music. I don't think there's anything else in the pipeline, but these things take so long now. That's something you've got to get used to. You actually forget about tracks you've made and can't remember where they are in the pipeline. Are they out? Are they coming out? And so on. But yeah, I would keep plugging away. I'll be honest, I've been a bit lazy on the production side in about the last month or so. So I do need to get cracking into some new stuff.
Well, that's great stuff. I love your music. I'm so glad you were open to doing this today. I'll put your SoundCloud and your Beatport in the commentary section of the podcast post as well today. And anyone who wants to follow you can find you in those places. And I appreciate your time.
No, been fun. It's been interesting based on the questions that you sent me prior to. I mean, trying to think of tracks that have influenced you and all the rest of it, which was actually quite difficult. I was trying to think. I did find one that just to
yes, please.
So this was originally released by it was called Invisible Ink, but actually the artist's name is Barry Jameson. He's quite well known, I think, in the world of progressive. This was a track called Stars, which I still like it. I couldn't tell you when it came out, probably 2001, 2, something along those lines.
Yeah, my prime time.
So this is one that I dug out as one of my favorites.
So good. So good.
Something about that. I don't know. When you think that
timeless, really. It still sounds great.
Yeah. I mean, that luckily I have it on vinyl, but it was re-released digitally. And Guy J's done a remix of it, and I can't remember who else. There was another artist as well. So I was really chuffed when that came out as a digital release rather than having to have a sort of scratchy vinyl recording of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one I still like to listen to from time to time. Just gets you in the mood.
It does.
But yeah, I mean, it's as you say. I wish you all the best with your productions. Keep going at it.
One day at a time, right? One session at a time.
As you say, when it's finished, when it's finished. At the end of the day, but there'll come a point where you just I don't know. You get to a point where you kind of know it's finished. I think you just get to a point where you can't add anything else, and then you think, right, that's finished.
I love your philosophy on that. Yeah, that's a good philosophy. I like it.
I mean, believe me, I'm the worst advocate of my own philosophy in that I've wasted huge amounts of time trying to find bits for a track that really doesn't need any more. So I'm a terrible advocate of what I tell people to do. I don't do it, but it's generally that's what I found, and I keep telling myself that with these tracks, that there's nothing else to add because you can't add anything else, or find the bit to add because it isn't there. Mm-hmm. You can't add it because there's nothing else. Now, you might be able to take something out, maybe add something or replace it, but basically you can't add that extra something that you think it needs. If you can't find it, it's because there's no room for it.
There's no room. Yeah.
So I think you get the first tune out there, and the rest will follow. I mean, that's that first one took me 6 months. I think 6 months. Sorry, I think the second few that I had out, my own EP, came out a month after that, something like that. So, and then you get a lot more confidence once you get a couple released, because of course you think beginner's luck, you get the first one out there, but once you get a couple out and then maybe a remix, then you start thinking, yeah, okay, I can do this, and it helps.
Good advice.
The next one, yeah.
Well, thank you for your time today. It was so good meeting with you, and